Hello, listeners. I'm Staci-lee Sherwood, coming to you from Reality Checks with Staci-lee from All About Animals Radio. Now, if you think animal issues are just about animals, well, no, they also involve politics and economics, so they really do affect all of us. So I hope you learn a little something today, maybe be motivated to act, and enjoy the show. So with that, my guest today is Vita Straum, a lifelong vegan. So welcome, Vita.
Hi.
Now, can you talk about how long you've been vegan and what drove you to make such a change?
Yeah, I was actually 42 when I went vegan, and I'm 76, so not quite lifelong, but it's getting there. I was actually doing some seminars about self-improvement and insight, looking at yourself and to be the best person you could be. And one of the questions was, would you be willing to take on some project that you might not be able to complete in your lifetime? And some of us in the seminar said, no, we want to be happy and productive and make a difference, but no, we don't want to do that. And some of us said, yeah. So I was actually looking for a major project to work on with most of my energy and time. And a friend, I had a typing business, typewriters, remember?
Oh, gosh, yes.
I had a typing business. And one of my clients brought me a picture of a little lab monkey being tortured. And I looked at this picture, and of course, I'd had kitties all my life. And I was one of those I love animals people. And I looked at that picture, and it was just horrifying. And I said, literally, who do we call? We have to stop this. And, once everybody knows about it, well, we can just stop this right now. We can end it immediately. So I actually called Cloris Leachman, the actress, because I had been living in LA typing a lot of movie scripts and TV scripts. So I said, I know she's been doing work with animals, so I don't know who to call about this. And they said, well, we'll have somebody get back to you. And I thought, oh, sure. And 10 minutes later, someone called and said, Clara said you should call this guy. So I called this guy, and we talked for an hour, and I was just in tears. I was just horrified. He started just sharing what some of the things we do to animals. And I went to a Last Chance for Animals meeting that night in Los Angeles. And at that time in Southern California, what most of the activism was about was against getting animals out of labs and anti-vivisection.
Right.
And fur. Those were the two main things people were working on. And by the way, don't eat them.
Right.
Oh, okay. Okay. And and it just I knew I was eating dead animals, but like most people, you just don't think about it. And I call myself at the time a speciesist carnivore because I never ate deer or lamb or lobsters, but lots of parts and pieces of cows, pigs, and chickens, but not all pieces, But anyway, after a few months of really learning about the abuse, it was just obvious to me that if I really wanted to commit my life to being an animal liberation activist and freeing all animals, that I had to be vegan. There was just no way around it. There's just no justification. Right. So I went vegan, and I hate to cook, still do. And I thought at the time, I guess I'm going to eat saltines the rest of my life. It didn't occur to me that it would be a problem.
Right.
And what I started discovering was that two things. There's 12 kinds of rice in every normal grocery store, and everybody just buys the same kind all the time.
Right.
It's just habit. Food is just habit and tradition and comfort. That's all food really is. And so what I discovered was there were so many things to eat. I mean, there's 93 kinds of lettuce, and I didn't know any of this stuff because like most people, I just ate the same thing pretty much all the time. But I discovered that for me, it was easy. I did not want to participate in in industries that you pay so they can torture and kill animals.
Right.
So for me, it was easy. It was just, well, I'm not going to participate in that. But then over the years, for the next few years, I realized it wasn't going to be that fast and that easy for most people. And I wish it was, but I can't give that to them. I can't give you that moment where you say, okay, this is who I'm going to be from now on. And I'm going to alter my life for somebody else. period. And so what I realized was mostly people didn't know what to eat. So I started collecting not recipes, but just menus from people. And I put the first little book together in 1992 of what to eat when you don't eat animals. And it was mostly just menus. Here's 5 breakfasts, here's 5 lunches, to give people an idea. And over the years, I've just expanded it. And a year or so ago, I met someone through Facebook who does great editing and formatting. And so the newest version of what to eat when you don't eat animals is now it's a PDF. It's free. And I hope your listeners go and check it out, on the links, because it really shows there's so much out there to eat. It's just, I've been vegan, 34 years now, and the number of vegan cheese alternatives is, getting over the hundreds,
Right.
Compared to when I started, there was like one, but anyway, that's mostly what I'm working on in my life is my job is I work for allcreatures.org, and I'm a lifelong atheist working for the Christian Animal Rights Site. And I do all the animal rights and all the vegan articles. And my executive director, Tams Nicholson, and the founder, Pastor Frank Hoffman, they do the religious. And I don't care what people believe. I want people to be vegan and take care of the animals and the planet. Right. So it's really a privilege working for All Creatures, because I really can post anything I want from a wide range of different kinds of activism, from interfaith vegans to Animal Liberation Front and everything in between. So it's a great resource site. And so that's really, what I've been working is on All Creatures, which is a privilege. And I get to work at home with the kitties, and I'm working on what to eat when you don't eat animals. So what made me have the change was animals, that you can make a difference with every bite. And it's a great way to live.
That's interesting about Cloris Leachman. I never would have known. I do remember her on the Mary Tyler Moore show, right? I think she was on Mary Tyler Moore and Young Frankenstein. But
Yes.
when you see celebrities, you never really know like what they're doing behind, what's really going on. Sometimes their personal life is very different than the facade that they have to the public. I myself have been completely vegan since, I guess, about 25 years, but really since high school. When I say almost vegan, I'm talking like 95%. I never ate seafood. For some reason, it just always, the smell and taste always just got to me. So I was never into seafood. I was never a dairy person. My mom told me that even when I was like a little kid, we'd get the pizza and I would take off all the cheese and I just wanted the bread and the tomatoes. And this is like when I was like, 8, 9, 10 years old. So I don't know, maybe my body just inherently knew dairy was bad for you. Actually, dairy actually makes osteoporosis worse. It doesn't actually make it doesn't build strong bones. It actually weakens a bone. So that's a whole other lie from the industry. But actually, I didn't really have that much of a problem because I was kind of lucky. I didn't really develop a taste for the meat and the dairy. Right. So for me, quote, giving up food, it was not really that hard. But when I come across people who want to go vegan, I take them either to an Italian restaurant or an Indian restaurant, because there's so many great options that are basically vegan or almost vegan anyway. Right. And then I'm like, well, see, you're already eating this. So you're already kind of consuming vegan food. It's not just, people think, where do you get your protein? What do you eat? And I'm like, well, I'm not eating wilted lettuce, sweetheart. I'm eating a lot of food, a lot of food, so much more than when people think. So let me ask you, was there any like pushback from people around you when you decide to completely give up eating animals or animal byproducts? Because sometimes there is some of that.
Well, I was working at home alone at the time with my typing business. Right. And my social life was doing landmark courses, which is about self-development. So there were people willing to listen.
Right.
And what I discovered early on was I just don't want to be around people eating animals. So there were a lot of social things that I stop going to, birthday parties, weddings. I to sit there and watch people put it in their mouth, it's just never, I'm just not one of those people that can tolerate that.
Right.
And I know people who should do that. And for me, it was more important to take care of the animals and to stay committed to what I was committed to, but to not be like pushy about it and not be so, to go to somebody's party and take your vegan meatloaf and spend the whole day talking about how good the vegan meatloaf is, while they're sitting gnawing on turkey bones or something, So the pushback, it wasn't a problem for me. And I know it is a problem for some people.
Yeah.
And there's so much literature out there now and so much good information from activists for activists about how to deal with all those situations. And you need to draw your own lines. That's, I think, the thing that's the hardest for so many people is sometimes your family and your friends and their approval is more important than other things that you think you're committed to. And it's a test. It's a test of your integrity and your willingness to stand for what you believe in. And I've just found it to be so much more empowering to just be truthful than to sit there and pretend it's all right with me when they're sitting, and people say, just one bite, and it's like, no, do you understand what they do to these animals? I mean, this is atrocious. And I think what I talk about are the animals and what they do to the animals. I'm not interested so much in vegan recipes or how much potassium is in a walnut.
Right. Right.
I mean, really, what I'm interested in is having people understand that they can take a stand and be committed to something that they already care about. Most people are not interested in torturing animals, but they do. They pay people to do that. And it's just a matter of, and I used to be for years, decades, wonderful at having these open, sweet, soft conversations with people. Mm-hmm. But I literally can't do it anymore, Staci. I know too much. And doing this full time, I hear some new horror to inflict on animals, probably 3 or 4 times a week that I never heard of. It's bottomless. It's finite like the stars. I mean, what we do is, and most 99.99% of the abuse to animals is for food in the world. And of all the animals abused for food and tortured and killed, most of the abuse is for dairy and eggs. The laying hens and the dairy cows have the worst lives of all the animals who are abused for food. Most people don't know that most of the chickens they eat are like 40 days old. If you go into a slaughterhouse, the broiler chickens, we call them broiler chickens, right. They're not clucking like chickens. They're peeping. They're chicks. They're 40 days old.
Okay, so they're like juveniles then, basically.
They're not even full-grown chickens, And the pigs and the cows we eat are, months old. They have no life. They're born to be murdered. And so for me, it's important just for me to talk about the animals. And I'm just not as good at it as I used to be because I'm just so disgusted. There's so much information out there now. There's so much reality and the impact on the planet. We literally slaughter in the U.S. about 1 million animals an hour. That's 300 a second. And if you have a football field and you have a cow, a pig, and a sheep and a goat for 10 yards, and then for 20 yards, you have turkey, and the next 70 yards is chicken. Every 3 seconds, that many are killed. And before they were killed, they were all peeing and shitting, which all goes into our air, land, and water. So the fact, it isn't just that we abuse the animals. It's not an accident. There's this circular, vicious thing that you hurt them, they hurt the environment, and then people eat them and get sick and die. And the whole thing is just this habit, tradition, and false information. And, like the whole thing with, you need milk. No, dairy actually does kill your bones.
Oh, it's terrible.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
the whole
terrible.
thing is just, so for me, it's just, it was more important for me to be standing for what I said I was committed to, which was ending animal abuse. And that means I don't eat them. And I don't go around and I don't be with people who are eating them.
Yeah, animal agriculture uses a huge amount of water, which, as you know, we're just contaminating water beyond any kind of thought process between the drilling, the fracking, spraying herbicides. I mean, just go down the list, and then you have, animal agriculture, and anything that goes in the water stays in the water. You cannot remove it. The only time you can quote remove something in the water is if it was like a shirt and you pulled it out right away. But anything that's going to break down in the water is going to stay in that water in some capacity forever. So think about all of that. And then I wrote an article about the dairy industry because I'd known about this for years. And like you said, the information is out there, but people just don't, I don't know, they don't process it or they don't want to believe it. But the dairy calves with the those spikes that they put in the spikes that they put on like the nose and the mouth to prevent the babies from nursing so that it basically hurts the mom. So it's not just that we're taking the mother's milk, but we're actually inflicting pain. I mean, it's so sick. And the thing is, you can buy these plastic rings on Amazon for like $2. You can go on YouTube and there are videos where these, guys are laughing about, oh yeah, I did this, to my calf kind of thing. So this is like widely accepted kind of practice. And yet, for whatever reason, people just haven't caught on. Are you surprised, what with the information era that, obviously we've had the internet like 30 years now, and God knows there's like billions and billions of websites out there. Are you surprised, because I kind of am, that more information isn't out there like in mainstream, or that more people haven't caught on? Because there must be, and I'm not even just talking about PETA, there's a lot of videos of what goes on in animal agriculture from beginning to end, right? There's just no way you could possibly look at that. Not to mention the documentary, the film Earthlings. I mean, if you watch Earthlings, I don't know how you could even get through that and not just hate humanity, quite frankly, for the cruelty. But there's so much out there. You don't even have to like really look for it. So I am kind of surprised that it hasn't caught on or stuck more. Are you?
No, and it's all money.
Yeah.
It's just money. The media is owned by these corporations. And, you're not going to have a Super Bowl ad about, silk, plant-based milk.
Right.
Because the dairy industry, wants you to buy their crap. And big ag, runs. The farm bill comes up, I think, every 5 years from the government. And I think it's something, and don't quote me on the numbers, but it's something like $38 billion in subsidies.
Yeah, it's huge.
And the percentage of that goes to farmers growing food for people to eat is 1%. So the government, if you're slaughtering pigs, you get subsidized to buy the piglets. You get subsidized for the food. You get subsidized for the transportation. You get subsidized for the slaughter. You get subsidized for the rendering. It's all money. And there's these great programs now. There's Rowdy Girl there's Transformation, and then there's the Rancher Advocacy Program, and I think there's a few in Europe too going on. But what they are is they're taking farmers who don't want to be animal farmers anymore, right, and they're walking them through all the the technical and the legal and the biological and the everything, the steps that they need to take so they can be mushroom farmers. Good. Or soy farmers, or whatever. And there's many of these farmers. I think one of the great things I've learned just in the last few years is there's a lot of people who've been in the quote animal farming business, for generations, and they really hate it. It didn't occur to me that they might hate it.
Right.
That they might actually care about the animals. But I've actually awakened to that in the last few years. But what are they going to do? That's your job. That's your family. And when you talk about peer pressure, all of your friends are ranchers, all of your families, so it's very difficult to just say, okay, I'm not going to participate in that anymore. And for an individual single female, it was easy for me. I didn't have family that I needed to care for, or that I really was concerned about what they thought. It's just not in my nature to be, more worried. I'm less worried about what people think of me than what I think of myself.
Right.
But it's difficult. So the media is owned by these corporations, and the pharmaceutical industry, for God's sake, they don't want people to be well. I mean, that's the last thing they want. They're just raking in the money. And I hardly ever watch TV anymore. And I'm definitely a TV junkie. I Netflix all the time.
Me too.
But I love Netflix. It's like no commercials. But if I watch regular TV once in a while, I cannot believe the drug commercials. It's just astounding to me. Call your podiatrist. Who has a podiatrist? Or a neurologist? But they want people to be sick. And they want people, so they want you to think that you have to eat this horrible stuff to be well. But, we know what it does. But it's just so frustrating because it's money. And there's plenty of media. So that's why links. Send anybody that send them every link you can. Because eventually, people popping on their phones and their toy, their computer toys all the time, they will click on these links. And most of us are here because we saw a video or a picture.
Right.
And we were horrified. And the question then becomes, okay, now I'm horrified. What do I do? And then I'll go back to my little passion project of what to eat when you don't eat animals, because I make 2 or 3 vegan meals every day that are really simple and delicious. And they have to be simple because I hate to cook. So I put the book together to give people really a resource to see all there is to eat, to make it easier for yourself and for your friends and family if you want to deal, if they want to participate with you in it.
Right. And that's a great thing. So I wanted to switch gears a little. When we talk about animal agriculture, it's not just the water and the land and the cruelty and the actual livestock. And of course, they call it livestock as opposed to chickens and pigs to get you in that mindset that it's just a commodity. But huge amount of other species, some of which are native and wild, some of which are endangered, are also killed. Like our wild horses and burros that are just being removed, basically they're going to be extinct within this year or the next year. I don't see how that would not even happen. So the wild horses are being removed so that they can have more grazing of cattle on public land. And then, of course, we all know about the wolves. The wolves are constantly being killed just at the thought that maybe one day a wolf might kill a cow. It used to be that if there was actually some sort of proof, but all a rancher or farmer has to do is say, you know what, Jack, I'm thinking that there might be a wolf somewhere in 50 miles from here. Why don't you go and get rid of the whole pack just in case? And Jack from the USDA or Fish and Wildlife says, hey, Stan, no problemo. I will go out and slaughter them. And they slaughter not just the whole family, the pups, everything. And so that devastates the ecosystem. And then, of course, the Tule elk in California, which they're endangered, right? Ironically, California spent a lot of money and time putting the elk back in like their historical, habitat. Point Reyes, of course, is the shining example of this. And it's a small area. And the elk are like behind a fence. They're denied food. They're denied water. They're slowly being starved to death for the dairy cows, right? Which is crazy. Ironically, they had some sort of oyster industry at the same park. And California decided now that was too polluting. So they got rid of that. So that shows they are aware that animal agriculture in any form is devastating to the natural land and the water, but they just don't have what's the word I'm looking for? Integrity, balls, intelligence, whatever, to get rid of dairy. And in fact, we had pardon the expression, hearing a few months ago, which I attended on Zoom. I use that term loosely because normally you get 3 or 2 minutes to speak. And because they were chit-chatting, like we were talking before, they were chit-chatting and wasting time, their time, they decided they were going to cut into public comment because they didn't want people to talk about the native, Thule elk that should be there, and you should get rid of the dairy cows. So they gave us less than 60 seconds to make a comment. And California is touted as like this big environmental state. Here to tell you folks, no. A big facade, and they do get some things right, but a lot of their produce is also irrigated in the wastewater from oil drilling, which is about as contaminated and dangerous as you can imagine. But animal agriculture affects a lot of other species, not just the actual animal that we kill to eat. And that's another thing that people don't realize. So when you're ordering that steak, it's not just that cow. It's, all the other species that have been killed, all that water that's been contaminated. So, yeah.
And when they have a recall, a lettuce or a spinach recall.
Oh, Lord, yes, the recalls.
Because it has E. coli.
Mm-hmm.
Spinach and lettuce don't shit.
I know.
And it's runoff from animal agriculture that we use that water with full of who knows what to water produce, So the other thing I really want to say, Stacy, is when the Thule elk and the wild horses and the wolves and all the people who love the wild animals, the organizations, I put this on their head. The organizations who are promoting certain species of animals do not, I'm going to say most of the time, do not link the eating of animals to the destruction of the specific species that their organization is working on.
Exactly.
So right. The people, the wild horse people, the only horse advocacy group that I know of that promotes veganism is the Fund for Horses. And they have a vegan project. The environmental organizations who claim to care about the environment, the only one that I know of that promotes veganism is the Center for Biological Diversity.
Right, yeah.
But the environmental organizations and the wolf and the coyote and the wild horse organizations, they don't want to upset their donors who don't want to think about who they're eating.
Right. And many of them are also hunters too, which is also kind of a weird
But the difference these groups could make if they would have their members actually link their love for wolves and their love for the wild horses, they're responsible directly or indirectly for what's happening to the wild animals as long as they continue to eat animals. And one person, here's the argument I hear is like, well, if I went vegan, it's not going to, well, first you're going to save a bunch of animals. But it isn't a matter of that. It's a matter of wholeness and integrity. And for me personally, when you take a stand for something like that and you actually alter your life for somebody else, it just makes your life so much better. I'm one of the happiest people I know, drowning in this abuse 7 days a week, because it's just important to take a stand for something and be committed to it. But you can't protect wolves and not talk about the fact that if one cat, and like you said earlier, they're grazing cattle on public land, our public land. And they get, they pay like $1 a year. So again, it's money. It just goes back to money. And it has to be like everything else. It has to be each individual has to take a stand for what they care about and follow through on it as much as you can and find your niche. There's no way I'm going to go knock down a door and rescue an animal from a lab. I'm afraid I'll get hurt. I don't want to go to jail. And at first, when I was a Bandu baby activist, it was like, oh, I'll never be able to do anything to make a difference if I'm not going to do that. And, there's things you can do. I don't like public speaking, so I shouldn't do that. I'm not the person to be doing that. I like, podcasts and, I'm at home with my kitties and I can talk and I have a website, but there's things I'm not going to do. I'm not going to go throw blood on people who are wearing fur coats because, again, I don't want to get arrested. Not that I'm opposed to that tactic, but there's things I'm not going to do. But you need to find what you're good at and what your niche is. And like I say, working for all creatures, I'm on hundreds of email lists. I mean, I say you can never get too many emails. I can't believe the variety and extent and depth of work that different people are doing for animals in all different domains. And I get to post them on all creatures. So it's a wide variety of what people are doing. And it's like so enlivening to see, here's this, 20-year-old person who wrote this thesis on something that, I knew nothing about regarding animals, and there's so much going on, but it's so much money involved. The money is just horrific.
Oh, it's staggering. It's just staggering.
But again, I just to promote what to eat. We've listed there hundreds of products. So there's so much out there now that if you don't, if you think you need to give up, hamburgers and French fries, no, no, not at all. And, like I say, I make great meals and they're easy and they're delicious. And it just feels good because I'm not paying somebody to hurt somebody.
Right, right.
And that's really for me what it is. It's harming others.
Years ago, this would have been back in the mid 80s. I was volunteering at the Elmsford Animal Shelter, which was one of the first real no-kill shelters. And we had a fundraiser. You probably know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we had a fundraiser at the country club. I can't remember where the heck the country club was, but it was some fancy country club. And needless to say, it was the mid 80s. So obviously nobody even used the word vegan back then. It was more like vegetarian or whatever. So there was no such thing as that. And there was no actual vegan products or anything like that. So there wasn't a lot of options. However, like I said, there were already plenty of Indian or Italian options that already just existed, that have existed for hundreds of years, that you could have done. I mean, who doesn't love rice and beans and pasta, right? But no, they chose the typical steak and potatoes and all. So all of us there were pretty much kind of vegetarian anyway. So we're kind of looking at this and thinking, okay. And in walks in, and I just want to preface, I'm a Scorpio, so I am very opinionated and very stubborn. And sometimes I just can't or won't hold my tongue. So that's just me. So in walks this woman and she's got this huge fur coat on, right? Now I realized that Elmsford Animal Shelter was for dogs and cats, right? We weren't saving wild animals. But to me, like with you, it's all part of the bigger picture, right? Cruelty is cruelty regardless of the species. So we're already getting past the steak and the baked potato with butter, and in walks actually several women with fur coats. What was really amazing was it was actually warm weather out. So clearly this wasn't even like I'm freezing and this is all I have to wear. This was just for show. So I looked at this woman and I said, why the blank are you wearing a fur coat? And she just kind of looked aghast, like, how could I say something to her? And I said, you're at a fundraiser for animals. I mean, I get that you're not wearing a coat of dog, or that you think is not made of dog. Right. But who knows? But it's still the same thing. How can you possibly want to save dogs and cats and then promote cruelty? Do you have any idea what goes on to make it was a fox coat, to make a fox fur coat? And FYI, if you think that makes you beautiful and sexy, I got news for you. It makes you look really kind of ugly. Well, needless to say, at that point, everybody was listening, and you could kind of see, battle lines being drawn. And over the years, I have turned down going to some of these fundraisers for that reason, because I knew I wouldn't be able to hold my tongue. But the hypocrisy that's out there, and the environmental organizations, they really need to kind of step up and admit what we all know. And I get, donations, everybody's scrambling for donations. I get that. But, if you're taking it from what basically would be the enemy, I mean, if you're trying to save wolves or some wild animal, why why would you take money from hunters and those kinds of groups? They will never ever come across to your side. They will only try to break you
Right.
to get you to come to their side. It will never benefit them. But yeah, agriculture is a huge multi-billion dollar. I mean, the number of animals killed globally is what, several.
I don't even
I think,
comprehend.
yeah, it's like a billion a day, or I mean, the numbers just go on and on and on, and you can't. I couldn't fathom how that many animals could be killed, and we still have animals today. That was kind of like my aha moment, that you
Yeah.
could kill that many wild animals to make room for cattle,
Yeah.
and we still have them out. I mean, it's
Mhm.
staggering. And just in the time that we've been talking, right? You have to think about how many millions of animals have been killed. And eating animals doesn't make you healthy. That's one of the biggest lies. It actually makes you quite sick, heart disease and high cholesterol and high blood pressure and cancer, like the big four. And I wouldn't say they're only caused from eating, but definitely what you eat has a big contributor to all of that. So, but I love
Yeah.
all creatures, because that is allcreatures.org. That is a clearinghouse for all kinds of information, action alerts and articles, and just a whole host of information, which is a really great website to go to.
And just to
Um,
be sure, it's all dash creatures.
all dash
Because
creatures.org.
allcreatures.org, I don't know if it's still around, but it used to be like animal communicators who, of course, talked to the dogs and the cats and the horses, but they never talked about eating animals. So all dash creatures.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we don't. Yeah, sorry, we do not want to promote people that.
No.
No. We just all-creatures.org. That
Staci,
is just definitely.
before we complete, I think something else that's really missing in a lot of conversations about animal rights and veganism is there's racism and sexism and speciesism.
Speciesism, yeah.
And I think it isn't just that speciesism, Richard Ryder coined the term, I think somewhere in the 70s. And it really is it's no different than, sexism or racism. That I think less of you and I have the power, so I can do whatever I want to you. And people who are committed to ending racism and sexism really need to understand that if they're still speciesist, that they can stop that. Just like people who used to be racist aren't anymore. And people who used to be misogynists aren't anymore. People can change. But the whole idea that somehow animals are separate from us is the same reason, we have problems with race and, gender identity. That we think when people think they have more power than somebody else, or that they're better than them, or that they're more worthy, then you can justify doing anything to them.
Exactly.
So that's why I think it's so important for the people who love the wolves and love the coyotes, and, love the manatees, people who love sharks, but still eat tuna.
Yes.
We're running out of tuna, by the way,
We are.
And, the oceans, they die, we die. And they're a disaster now. And the fishing is, the number of animals that are dying from most, we talk about people throwing their plastic away, but I think a good percentage of the plastic that's found in the oceans when people try to clean it up is leftover fishing gear. They take these trawlers and they have like mile-long nets and they just scrape everything up. And so it isn't just that the particular kind of fish that they think people like to eat. Everybody gets caught in there. And you've destroyed the ecosystem. And then the ocean is screwed. And the whole, Mother Nature knew what to do. Everything works together. It's called ecosystem, and we've just screwed them up all over the world. And so much of it is about eating animals. So much. People who, hate rodeos and, we'll go to the rodeo demo against rodeos, and then on the way home stop at McDonald's and have a hamburger.
I
It's
know.
just
I
the
know.
disconnect. It's like
The
they call
disconnect.
it cognitive dissonance. It's like I love animals except at dinner time.
Exactly. Exactly.
But
Exactly. Right.
it's so great that you do this. I mean, there's so many podcasts out there now. We just need more people talking and having conversations like this. And hopefully more people will listen, and hopefully more people will use the resources that we provide. There's plenty of stuff to know, and there's plenty of good information out there. But like I say, when you say you're committed to something, walk the talk,
Yeah.
or shut up.
Yeah. Walk the walk. I can tell you for all the years that I worked with sea turtles, I don't know if I was the only person who was vegan, but a huge amount of the people that work with sea turtles and love sea turtles, and God knows it can be backbreaking work, would eat seafood.
Uh-huh.
Would eat
Well,
seafood.
yeah, they're like the wolves and the coyote people.
I know, I know. And the thing is, the loggerheads would eat crustaceans, right? Crabs and lobster, and that, of course, is a big, especially down here in Florida. That, of course, is a big commodity, and a lot of people eat it. And I would think, well, you're literally eating the food because the loggerhead can only eat that. The loggerhead cannot live on strawberries. They
Right.
can't live on saltines. They
Right.
cannot live on pasta or Indian food. We have that option. We don't have the sharp teeth. We don't have the enzymes to eat raw food. In fact, every time we eat an animal or animal byproduct, we get sick, obviously, right? Heart disease, cancer, all of that. But these other animals are not designed to be herbivores. And I always found that kind of fascinating. So I would tread lightly, but I always just found that, a very obvious disconnect because it was literally an ocean species and an ocean species. So you
Right.
would think that they would literally make that connection. They are eating the food of the loggerhead. It wasn't like they're eating a steak. And I
Right.
would try to get them to see that, but people want, like you said, they go to a protest or they sign a petition, and this is an atrocity. This I can't. I don't like the circus. I don't like the rodeo. But then don't tell me I can't have bacon, kind of thing, because we have dominion. I guess that also comes back to, we have dominion
Right.
over other species. But we're animals too. Obviously, some of us more than others, but we're part of the animal kingdom too, right? Nature isn't something we go to visit. We are nature, or we should be nature. And so that's also like a big part of it, too. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you, Staci.
And I hope people listening have enjoyed the show, and I hope they've learned something. And especially, I hope some of them start thinking, you know what, I do like Indian food, or I do like Italian food. Maybe I could go try some of that and not have the cheese or not have the meat, and just see how that goes. Because a lot of people eat, quote, vegan food and don't think of it in that mindset. It's really
Like a
not that.
banana.
Yeah, right, like a banana. It's really not that hard, but also it's not just, I mean, even, because we're a self-serving species. So even if we don't put cruelty or, environmental destruction as a premium, think about all of the diseases that affect us. What you eat absolutely will or will not give you cancer or heart disease or high cholesterol or blood pressure, all the big ones. And if you just switched to a plant-based diet, I can't say that you would not get those diseases, but likely not get those diseases. Or if you did, a lesser version, or you'd bounce back quicker. And that's just a fact. And you're not going to get that from the doctors and the drug companies, because they also make billions of dollars on all of that.
Yeah, they don't want to give it up.
No,
It's
they
like,
don't want. Yeah, they don't want to give it up. Yeah.
we're old enough to remember the doctors in their white coats doing cigarette commercials.
Oh my gosh. Yes,
I
exactly.
mean,
Exactly.
it's the same thing. It is the
Exactly.
same thing. And I think the difference with tobacco, as big as that industry was,
Yeah.
it doesn't hold a candle to animal egg.
Well, no, because not everybody smokes, but everybody has to eat food. Yeah, and there's so many cultures, like the Italian culture is geared around food, right? Everyone gets around the table and, the cooking for hours and the eating for hours. So there's a lot
Well,
of
you can
culture
still do
around
that.
it.
That's
You
that's
can,
the joke of it. It's like it's not sacrifice. It's
right?
just want people to know there's no sacrifice in it at all. In fact, it's much better. I mean, there's just so much more food than I ever thought, available in the world because it was just such habit. But I also think that, when people go vegan, I think one of the things we stop doing is we stop eating the rage. Those animals are upset.
Yeah.
From the minute they're born, their whole lives, they're upset. And that's biochemical stuff going on in their bodies. And we're eating that. People are eating that 3 or 4 or 6 and 8 times a day. I don't know how to prove that, but I'm not surprised the world's in the state it's in now. Everybody's just mad.
That's true. And you know what? And this is just the one last thing I want to end on. I remember reading something years ago. I don't remember where I read it, but I heard it more than once. And it had to do with, I think it had to do with Korea. And I don't know if that was North and South Korea, but in the Korean culture, they eat dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time they will like beat the dog before
Right.
they kill it and eat it because they think the adrenaline rush will be something good for the man, so to
Well,
speak.
but it's also
Kind of like their value, I
biochemical.
guess.
It's
Yeah.
biochemical. It
Right.
does change the
Right.
taste of the flesh.
Yeah.
That's accurate,
Yeah.
So,
And I remember reading that and thinking, God, that's really kind of sick. I mean,
well,
if
it's
you
kind of
think
like
about it.
but
Yeah.
it's what they do to all the animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're all the animals.
Yeah,
Just
but this was
torture.
like another level of extreme that you don't ever hear about either. But I remember reading about that and thinking, gosh, that's, I mean, if that doesn't get people thinking, I don't,
Well, we don't know.
I don't
You
know what
never know
does.
what's going to get through. And you
That's
just
true.
got to keep putting out that's why I'm for every tactic and every strategy and every method that anybody can come up with because we don't know what's going to reach people.
That's true.
We don't know.
So for people who are interested, what was it that you wrote? What to eat?
What to eat when you don't eat animals.
What to eat when you don't eat animals. And that can be found on the website?
Yeah, if you just look, if you search for what to eat when you don't eat animals,
Okay.
and it comes up Vita or vegan, then that's the one. That's
Okay.
the simplest way.
Okay. And people can download that and read it and
Yeah,
share
it's a
it.
PDF, and
Excellent.
the March update is now out. And we go through every few months and sometimes add new products or just some new horrible fact I learned. No good. It's like, oh, I never thought of doing that. But it's really a great, great resource for activists or people who want to be vegan or people who even don't think they want to be vegan, but I bet they get sucked in.
But are. Okay. Well, that is good to know. So with that, I encourage people to check out some of the other All About Animal podcasts. They have a lot of other terrific shows that you might find interesting. And with that, I will say for everyone listening, please consider going vegan. And that will be a wrap.